I learned the hard way that running a snow removal business in Boulder, Colorado, means dealing with entitled people who think winter services should be free. But I never expected someone to take it as far as Patricia Whitmore did. My name is Ian Nelson, and I have been operating Nelson Snow Services for the past 8 years. What started as a side hustle with a beat-up Ford pickup and a second-hand plow blade turned into a legitimate business with 3 crews, commercial-grade equipment, and contracts spanning from Boulder to Broomfield. I built my reputation on reliability, fair pricing, and the simple promise that when it snows, your driveway gets cleared before you need to leave for work. The business kept me comfortable, allowed me to hire good people, and gave me enough income to save for the future. Winter in Colorado is no joke, and people depend on services like mine when those heavy snowfalls hit. Everything was running smoothly until last November, when I got the first call from Patricia Whitmore, the president of the Meadowbrook Hills HOA. Meadowbrook Hills was one of those upscale developments with pristine landscaping, uniform mailboxes, and rules about everything from fence height to the exact shade of beige you could paint your shutters. The development sat on the western edge of Boulder, where the foothills started their climb toward the Rockies, which meant they got hit hard when winter storms rolled through. Patricia called my business line on a Tuesday afternoon. Her voice had that clipped, commanding tone that immediately put me on edge. "Hello, this is Patricia Whitmore from the Meadowbrook Hills Homeowners Association. I am calling because our community requires snow removal services, and I have been told you run a reputable operation." I was at my workshop at the time doing maintenance on one of the plow trucks. I wedged the phone between my shoulder and ear while I tightened the bolt. "Yes, madam. We do residential and commercial snow removal. What kind of service are you looking for? We have 47 homes in our development, and we need the main roads cleared whenever it snows more than 3 inches. Also, the driveways for all residents should be cleared to ensure uniformity and maintain our community standards." I whistled low. That was a massive contract, potentially one of the biggest I had ever handled. "That is definitely something we can do. Let me put together a quote for you. I will need to come out and assess the area, measure the total square footage of roads and driveways, and factor in the elevation and typical snowfall amounts for your location. When can you come by?" Patricia asked. "How about tomorrow morning around 9? "That works. I will meet you at the community entrance." The next morning, I drove out to Meadowbrook Hills in my truck. The development was impressive. I had to admit the houses were large, well-maintained, and set back from the street with professionally landscaped yards. The roads wound to the neighborhood in gentle curves, and someone had clearly put thought into the layout. Patricia was waiting at the entrance in a silver Lexus SUV. She stepped out as I pulled up, and I got my first look at her. She was probably in her mid-50s with blonde hair styled in that short, angular cut that seemed mandatory for a certain type of suburban woman. She wore expensive-looking athleisure wear and sunglasses that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. Her expression was already pinched, like she smelled something unpleasant. "You are Ian Nelson?" she asked, looking at my truck with barely concealed distaste. "That is me. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Whitmore." I extended my hand. She shook it briefly, her grip limp. "It is Miss Whitmore. I prefer to use my professional title, but Mrs. Fine. Shall we tour the property?" For the next hour, Patricia drove me around Meadowbrook Hills while I took notes and measurements. The development had roughly 2 of private roads, plus all those driveways. It was a substantial job, but nothing my crews could not handle. As we drove, Patricia kept up a running commentary about the community's standards, the importance of maintaining property values, and her vision for making Meadowbrook Hills the premier neighborhood in Boulder County. When we finished the tour, we parked back at the entrance. I did some quick calculations on my tablet. "All right, Miss Whitmore, here's what I am thinking. For full service on all roads and driveways, we are looking at about $4,000 per storm event. That includes hauling away excess snow when necessary and applying ice melt on the main roads. If you want a seasonal contract with guaranteed response times, I can offer a package deal for $20,000 that covers the whole winter season, November through March." Patricia's expression went from neutral to hostile in about half a second. $20,000. That is absurd. It is actually quite competitive for the scope of work, I said calmly. I had dealt with sticker shock before. You're talking about clearing and maintaining 2 miles of road plus 47 driveways every time it snows. That requires multiple trucks, multiple operators, fuel, equipment maintenance, insurance, and guaranteed availability. Snow removal is not cheap. Other neighborhoods get this done for much less, Patricia insisted. Other neighborhoods might have smaller areas or fewer services included. I am happy to adjust the quote if you want to reduce the scope. For instance, if residents handle their own driveways and we just focus on the main roads, that brings the seasonal contract down to about $8,000. Patricia crossed her arms. I need to discuss this with the HOA board. I will be in touch. She drove off without another word, leaving me standing in the November sunshine, wondering if I had just wasted my morning. But business was business, and I had other clients to worry about. I headed back to the workshop and forgot about Patricia Whitmore for a couple of weeks. The first real snow of the season hit Boulder in late November, dumping about 7 and overnight. My phone started ringing at 4 o'clock in the morning, which was normal. By 5, my crews were out clearing our contracted properties. We worked through the morning, pushing snow, salting roads, and making sure people could get to work safely. It was exhausting, but satisfying work. Around noon, I was grabbing a quick lunch at a diner on Pearl Street when my phone rang again. It was Patricia Whitmore. Mr. Nelson, this is Patricia Whitmore from Meadowbrook Hills. Our roads are completely impassable. We need your services immediately. I took a bite of my sandwich and chewed before answering. Miss Whitmore, I do not have a contract with your HOA. All my crews are currently deployed on contracted properties. This is an emergency situation, she said, her voice rising. We have residents who cannot get out of their driveways. I understand that it's frustrating, but without a contract, I cannot prioritize your development over my existing clients. I might be able to get a crew out there by this evening, but it would be charged at our emergency rate, which is $5,000 for full service. $5,000. That is highway robbery. That is the reality of emergency snow removal, Miss Whitmore. If you had signed a seasonal contract, you would have guaranteed service at the rates we discussed. As it stands, I have to pull a crew away from other work and pay them overtime. There's a long pause. I need to make some calls. I will get back to you. She hung up. I finished my lunch and went back to work. Patricia did not call back that day, and I assumed they either found someone cheaper or the residents just dealt with it themselves. December rolled around, and we had several more snow events. Each time my crews handled our contracted property smoothly. I expanded the business slightly, adding a 4th crew to handle the increased demand. Things were going well. Then in mid-December, Patricia called again. Mr. Nelson, I would like to discuss a contract for Meadowbrook Hills. Sure, I am happy to put together another quote. The rates I mentioned before still apply. Actually, I was hoping we can negotiate something more mutually beneficial. You see, Meadowbrook Hills is a prestigious community, and having your company listed as our official snow removal service will be excellent marketing for your business. In exchange for that exposure, we were hoping you could provide your services at a reduced rate. I rubbed my forehead. I had heard pitches like this before. Miss Whitmore, I appreciate the thought, but my business does not really need marketing. We are already operating at capacity most of the winter. What I need is fair compensation for the work we do. I am offering you valuable exposure. Patricia insisted. Exposure does not pay my employees or cover fuel costs. I said, if you want professional snow removal, the rates are what they are. I am already offering you a competitive price for the scope of work. Well, I find your attitude quite disappointing, Patricia said coldly. I will need to explore other options. That is certainly your right. If you change your mind, you have my number. That should have been the end of it. But Patricia Whitmore was not the type to let things go. Over the next few weeks, I started hearing from other contractors that Patricia had been calling around trying to get quotes for Meadowbrook Hills. According to the grapevine, she was offering exposure, publicity, and vague promises of future business in exchange for drastically reduced rates or even free service. Most contractors laughed her off. Christmas came and went. We had a white Christmas that year, which made for beautiful photos, but also meant my crews worked overtime. I did not mind. The holiday pay rates meant everyone went home with fat paychecks, and the clients were happy. The real trouble started in January. Colorado got hammered by a series of major winter storms, the kind that dumped 2 feet of snow in a single night and shut down highways. My crews were working around the clock, and I was running on coffee and adrenaline. On January 15th, we got hit with one of the biggest storms of the season. The Weather Service had been warning about it for days. A slow-moving system that was going to park over the Front Range and dump massive amounts of snow. I prepped my crews, made sure all the equipment was in top shape, and coordinated our response plan. The snow started falling around midnight. By morning, Boulder had 22 in on the ground, with more coming down. The city plows could barely keep up with the main roads, and side streets were a disaster. My phone was ringing nonstop with clients needing service, but we worked through our contract list. Safety was a priority both for my crews and for the residents depending on us. Around 10 o'clock in the morning, I was in my truck, clearing a driveway in North Boulder, when Patricia Whitmore called. I almost did not answer, but something told me this was going to be entertaining. "Mr. Nelson, I need your help immediately," Patricia said, and her voice had a desperate edge I had not heard before. "What is going on, Miss Whitmore?" "Meadowbrook Hills is completely snowed in. We have over 2 feet of snow, and no one can get out. This is a safety issue. We need your services right now." I finished pushing a load of snow to the side of the driveway before responding. "Miss Whitmore, as I have explained before, I do not have a contract with your HOA. All my crews are currently deployed. It is going to be at least 2 days before I have availability, and even then it will be at emergency rates. 2 days. That is unacceptable. We have people who need to get to work, medical appointments, essential services. Then you should have signed a contract when you had the chance," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I told you back in November that winter storms happen and that guaranteed service requires a contract. You chose not to sign. This is a disaster situation." Patricia practically shouted, "You have a moral obligation to help us. I have a contractual obligation to help my existing clients, which is what I am doing. If you want to be added to priority list for any future storms, we can discuss a contract for the remainder of the season." There was a pause, and when Patricia spoke again, her tone had shifted to something that might have been intended as sweet, but came across as oily.